Welcome to Engaging and Empowering School Libraries, a podcast that aims to raise the profile of school libraries by talking about topics that are current across education and teaching. As always, I'm joined by my co-hosts and school librarians, Ruth Maloney and Sabrina Cox. And tonight's guests are Emma Whiting, a school librarian who responded to a shout out on Twitter to join our conversation tonight, and a school librarian, Cath Skipper, who, after sharing a rather novel idea for World Book Day on the School Library Network, got invited along too. So beware, if you say something cool, you might end up on this podcast. So as I've already intimated, tonight's podcast is about World Book Day, a day when many schools take the time to celebrate books and reading. Over the last few years, the interest in World Book Day has been dominated by the craze of dressing up as your favourite book character. And whilst this is fun, it can cause much angst amongst parents and children who don't have time or the money to join in. We have many school librarians who do love this practice, so tonight's chat is not about saying that we should not be dressing up, but exploring other ways to celebrate World Book Day. So I think we should start with a quick introduction from all of us. I'm Elizabeth Hutchinson, a school library specialist, trainer and advisor. And Ruth, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hello, I'm Ruth Maloney. I'm the librarian at Tunbridge Grammar School in Kent. We're a secondary school, primarily girls, with a co-ed sixth form. And we, as we were just saying before we started, very, very much embrace the dressing up of World Book Day, along with other things, but we have not left that behind at the end of primary.
And Sabrina?
Hi everyone, I'm Sabrina Cox. I'm from Highcrest Academy in Buckinghamshire. And yeah, we don't dress up. In fact, the English department is being forced to do it this year.
And can I bring Emma in?
Hello, I'm Emma Whiting. I'm the school librarian at King Edward's, the sixth school on the south coast. We also don't dress up, but we do tend to do a World Book Week. So a whole week of events, which allows us to get reading out of the library and into the school. So I'm really looking forward to sharing some of that today.
Fantastic, thank you. And Cath?
I'm Cath Skipper. I'm the librarian at Campbell College, which is a boys' school in Belfast. We're an international boarding school. We also don't do dressing up, but we do other activities on World Book Day itself.
Fantastic. So let's start with a relatively easy question. Is that I'm assuming that most of you do activities year on year. So have you got an activity that you'd like to share with us that you've done previously and is going to win, and that's the reason that you've brought it back? So can I start with Emma?
So something that we like to do to kind of get reading across the whole school, as we said, is we have every teacher, every classroom door has a would recommend or a currently reading. So it's just an A3 poster that I designed in the World Book Week colours, and it's almost like the bare minimum. This is the bare minimum that we would really like you to do. And last year we had 70 posters across the school, so we're a secondary and sixth form. This year I counted today and it was about 55 already on Monday, which was pretty good. Right. But I think it works really nicely as a visual for students, because they're walking around the school, they're seeing the same poster every time, but with different recommendations, obviously, and some have book covers printed onto them, some have like fun text, some have got teacher's scroll that you can't actually read. But it's a really good activity for showing the students that reading is not just in the library, and it's not just the English department, it really is everybody, and we actively encourage our staff to read as much as we do our students. So it's something that works really quite well for us.
I think that's something that's really important, isn't it, is the fact that it is the modeling of reading is important, that adults read as well as the students, and that is part of the engagement, isn't it? Being able to have a discussion with your maths teacher possibly about a book that he or she is reading is just as important than just talking to your school librarian, and the links and the connections that you can make across your school is huge within that platform. It sounds very exciting. You'll have to share some photographs with us so that we can share it across Twitter. But yeah, that sounds great. Thanks, Emma. What about you, Ruth?
Sorry. Yeah, we likewise always try and include an activity that involves the staff. So in past years, we haven't done it this year. We've chosen a theme and we've looked at literature and translation. So we've asked the staff to read a particular book in translation, and then they get a picture of that which they put on their lanyard, and the kids have to go around and work out which teacher is reading which book, in the hope that it sparks a bit of a conversation. We have done, we often have a photograph of a member of staff hidden behind a book or their bookshelves. Guess which teacher this is? We always try and do that. And it's exactly as Emma was saying. Can you help the kids to understand that lots of people are reading, lots of members of staff are reading, and they're reading not just because it's World Book Week, but because they are readers. And, pretty much in the nature of being a teacher, we have very few who don't read something or other. And I don't care what they're reading, but it's that idea that, yes, you can ask your teacher and they will have something interesting that you're reading. We have yet to have an activity that we run year after year after year, because I have a mind like a butterfly, so I like to change things up. But this year we're starting what I hope will become a tradition of, I don't know whether it's scrapbooking or bullet journaling, but we've given every form group a big sheet of card which clips into a scrapbook effectively, and I'm asking them to record what they're reading now, what they want to read, what their recommendation of the best book ever, whatever they like that represents their form now. And then we're going to keep them, and then next year I'm going to ask them to do the same thing. So over the years, the idea is that we build up a record of the school's reading. And it's so fashionable at the moment. They all want to get their coloured pens out and do their little stars and doodles and special writing and things. So I'm hoping that that will be our tradition for setting up.
It sounds great. It sounds really good. Cath, can I bring you in? Sorry, Cath. Sorry.
Yeah. Similarly, I wouldn't run something year on year. I tend to sort of run things on a maybe 3 or 4 year cycle, sort of activities that way around. This year, the activity that I shared on SLN, we're doing as a treasure hunt or a scavenger hunt. And I've been really pleased with how many other people have enjoyed this activity that I shared. It's really nice to be able to give something back after I get so many great ideas from the SLN network and other networks as well. So it's a scavenger hunt. There are 14 book characters that are going to be hidden around about school. The pupils have to find them, identify them, fill out a sheet which has got the space for all the names of the characters on it. And each of those names has got a shaded square. And when the letters in those shaded squares are rearranged, it will form a hidden message, which obviously I can't tell you because that would give the game away for everybody. But hopefully it'll go down quite well. I tend to find that the simplest ideas are sometimes the ones that are best. I've had years where I've spent hours and hours and hours coming up with something, or singing or dancing, and the engagement hasn't been brilliant. And sometimes I think keeping it simple is the best way to go. But similarly, this year I'm also doing something different as well. So I've got some bingo bookmarks, I guess you could call them, to try and encourage our pupils to read a little bit more widely. So they'll each get a bookmark which has got 5 challenges on it, and I'm challenging them to read 5 books before the end of April. And the tutor group that reads the most books collectively will hopefully get donuts or muffins at break time as a bit of a reward. So fingers crossed that works. If it works, then I'll hopefully do that year on year. So yeah.
Absolutely, food always is a good incentive.
I think so.
What about you, Sabrina? Well, this is the second year that I'll be doing World Book Day as sort of head librarian. Last year I didn't actually manage to do much outside of the library, whereas this year me and the literacy coordinator have kind of gone a little bonkers with it. So she's organised a whole pile of activities for the whole day across the school year groups, which is brilliant. And then I've got a ton of things that are running in the library. So apart from the enforced dressing up for the English department, and the kids have to guess who they are. They're going to come in and guess who I am. We're decorating form doors, and there's going to be a competition on that. I'm having a book picnic in the library this year, which I do have a Hoover on standby, so we'll see how that goes. And it's just lots of things that are just pinging up. I've got targeted events for the year 7 and 8s. The year 9s have been set something, and that's gone straight into their emails. So it's like, you can't ignore this. Hello, we're here. So yeah, we'll see what sticks this year and we'll go with it.
I think that that's the case, isn't it? Is that I think it might have been Emma saying that it doesn't necessarily have to be all singing or dancing, and it is finding that thing that is right for students today. So something that works this year brilliantly might not work next year because it's a different cohort of students, a different set of teachers. So we do need to sort of work our way through and pick up different ideas. So that's what I liked about Cath sharing her idea, was the fact that it was something that was a little bit unique and a little bit different. Actually, I might come back to Cath. How do you make sure that the cards that you share don't go missing? You hide cards around the school. Is that what you do?
Yeah, trust. So, so I make a little note of where I've put them and what I put where. So if any of them do go missing, and people comes and at the end of the day and they say they can't find it, I'm not going to hold that against them, and I'll give them the answer.
Okay.
I'll still have to rearrange the letters. So
because I must admit, I used to do this thing when I used to put laminated blurbs of books on the backs of toilet doors. You had a captive audience, should I say, but sometimes they would disappear. But I was thinking, well, actually, if someone's taking a book cover and a blurb away, then they're welcome to it, but they do walk. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see how many of them are still there at the end of the day.
I have done it before, and fingers crossed it did work all right, and they were all still in the same location at the end of the day. So fingers crossed this year will be the same.
Absolutely. So one of the things that some schools do is assemblies on World Book Day, and we've all sat through several of them where staff or librarians have talked about their favourite book. And as much as that is really important, and like we were saying before, it's essential that it is seen and understood that other people read. Have you ever taken a part in a World Book Day assembly? If you did, how did it go? Would you do it again? And if not, is there something that you would have changed in the one that you did? Can I come to Ruth on that one?
Yeah, so this is the kind of bane of my week, because we run ours all week, and I run an assembly for each year group. So there are 6 year groups, so obviously there are only 5 days in the week. This week as well, World Book Day itself is a teacher strike day, so that's added in a little bit of fun. But so I have always said I'm not going to do that assembly where I stand at the front and I have a collection of people who tell their favourite book, because in my feeling is that half, if not more, of the year group have switched off the minute they walk in the door. So I've always done a quiz, and it's my 6th year in the school, and I've done a different quiz every year. Next year I'm going to recycle, because I will have been through all of my 6 quizzes. So I've done blockbusters, I've done I don't know, various other, of those kind of standard formats, one of which, Family Fortunes. I don't think I ever really understood the rules of Family Fortunes or how that went. So I had 2 English teachers standing there saying, no, Mrs. Maloney, that isn't how it works. This year they're doing a true or false quiz, and it's the first year I've managed to get the 6th form to run the assemblies for me. So there are 3 running simultaneously, and I just rush between them and check that it's all going okay. But the year group stand up and they're given an A or B option. Raise your hand if you think it's A, put your hands on your head if you think it's B, sit down when you get it wrong. Okay. My feeling is that's fast, it's a laugh. The questions aren't very difficult, they get more difficult, but you you can't go wrong. If you really don't want to participate, you actively choose the wrong answer and you sit down.
Yeah.
Everybody is up, everyone is talking, and they come out of assembly and they're talking about it. I can't want any more for World Book Day than that. So that's always been my approach for assembly.
Absolutely.
Do tell me something better, because I'm bored of it.
Has anybody else ever done an assembly? So Emma or Cath? No, I've got head shaking. Well, all I can say is that I did one assembly as the school librarian, and the piece of advice for me was don't mention reading or books. So that was a difficult start, wasn't it, really? It did go down well because I didn't mention either, but I did get them into the library, so I must have done something all right. Emma, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, so our assembly is tomorrow, so that's our whole school assembly, and we're doing something a bit different this year. Another staff member did an assembly earlier on in the year, which was really personal, and it was kind of sharing their story. And so my colleague, my library manager, is running the assembly, which she's really nervous about, actually. I'm quite surprised, when you see people's bravado change a bit. But it's around bereavement, and she lost a parent when she was quite young, and when Harry Potter was first coming out, and it was the emotional connection with the characters and with the different families that are in Harry Potter that really kind of like helped and guided her. So she's going to be sharing that, which is like really quite a personal thing. But we noticed that the previous quite personal assembly had a really big impact on the students, because it's not just somebody lecturing and talking about a topic, it's an actual emotional connection. Hopefully it goes really well tomorrow. We'll see.
But I think that's so true, isn't it, that everybody has a story to tell, and it is that personal connection that actually makes something more interesting, and actually hearing how books have helped others can help students themselves engage with something. Ruth, can I bring you in?
Yeah, absolutely. That's really interesting, because I still remember to this day as an assembly, and I must have been about 10 or 11, and a teacher was talking about he was a bone marrow donor, but he told this hilarious story to a group of kind of middle school kids about how once a month he went to see a woman, and he lay down on the bed and she made it all very relaxing. And the story went on and on and on, and none of us knew where it was going. And then he told us that actually what he did was donate bone marrow, and why he did it. And still to this day, I can remember almost nothing of my school life, but I will never forget that. And I think that's brilliant. I really like that idea. And a really nice way to bring in the librarian, and to make the students realize that they are a real person, which is quite important.
Absolutely. We're taking it slightly away from assemblies. One of the things that Schools Library Service in Guernsey did was that they pulled together and did a quiz. So this is where the connection is the quiz. With it was a bit like a pub quiz setup, tables of 6, and we were restricted with the number of students that we could bring into the library. So this is the public library in Guernsey. What we did was we told each school that they could only invite 6 students. And then when we got them together, we then thought, actually, we want this to be a mix of schools. We don't want to have one school against another school. So we then mixed, much to their disgust at the beginning, we mixed them up in teams so that there was at least 3 schools per table. And then it was like, as you see in a pub quiz, we had a big screen and we had the questions being asked. And actually what was really interesting was that over it was an hour and a half in the end, with a break for biscuits and drinks. The students themselves began to get together and they wanted to win as a team. They didn't care that it was a different school sitting next to them. And I think that is something that not all readers get the opportunity to do. And I think, schools love to celebrate their sporting achievement. They love to celebrate their art achievements. And it's not very often, apart from things like accelerated reader, where you've read so many books and you get you get an assembly and people support that. It's not very often that you get the opportunity to celebrate students' knowledge of books. And it was a really special event and something that I will treasure for the rest of my life, because I think it was something that was doable in a small community like Guernsey. But I do think that it's something that could potentially be shared, within a group of schools. If one school could host it. It does take a bit to set up, organising a quiz is not easy. But I think the more you do it, the better you get at it. So we ran it for a good 3 or 4 years. Hopefully they're still doing it. I'm not sure now that I've left, but it's that kind of thing. Ruth, can I bring you back in?
Yeah, there is something like that now. I don't know whether anybody else is doing it, but there's the National Reading Challenge, which is that, a competition. You send a team or 2 teams from your school, and there's a heat, and then there's a round. We have never entered because the logistics of it's in the evening, so I have to stay at school, I have to get parental permission, blah blah blah. I can't face the paperwork, if I'm honest. But I agree with you, it's really rare to find that ability to champion your readers. And often in a school, your readers won't be the kids who are the sporting excellence or the other things. So it's great to be able to do that. But I don't know whether anybody else has joined that initiative. I think it's National Literacy Trust who are running it. It's certainly a big national event, but I'm afraid I've always chickened out.
That's allowed, Ruth. That is allowed. I did invite Hayden Gigner, I hope I've got his name right, school librarian, to tonight's chat, and unfortunately he was too busy and couldn't come along. But he said something really interesting, is that how do secondary school libraries balance the silliness with the seriousness of World Book Day? And that really sort of hooked me, in as much as, we've got several people tonight, some saying that they love the dressing up, some saying that they don't love the dressing up. Do you think, it's about celebrating books, isn't it? It's about celebrating reading, and there has to be that hook, whether it's through, your quiz in assembly, whether it's through what you're wearing. How do you think we get the serious message of reading across if we are just being silly through our dressing up? What do you think, Sabrina?
Thanks for picking me to go first.
Thought you'd been too quiet.
Quiet? Never. I think because I have always dressed up, even when no one else was dressing up, that was my thing. Even when I was a librarian assistant, and I made a point of coming in costume. And I had people coming up to me and say, "What are you wearing that for, miss? What is that?" And I'd go and get the book and I'd sit and chat about why this character is so amazing and important. And it was just the fact that because I went out of my way to do something stupid, as it were, it got attention, and it meant I could have that conversation about a book that was special to me.
Yeah, I think that's important. What about you, Cath? I can't remember. You said you don't dress up?
No, I don't dress up. I think every day obviously is World Book Day for librarians, isn't it, really? But I think World Book Day just gives us an extra day where really you can just have books highlighted across the whole day. So, the pupils who might not naturally come to the library can't help but notice that there's something going on to do with books and reading. And I think that's where the silliness, if that's, what you want to call it, gives us that hook, because there's no escape from it. You've got messages in the daily bulletins saying this is what's happening on Thursday. It's World Book Day and we're having a competition, which is all focused on books or characters and reading. I encourage staff this year, I've asked staff to let me know what their favorite book was when they were in secondary school. and I'll use that for a display in the library. And I've also got social media accounts, so I'll do like a little sort of match the book to the teacher on that as well. So it's not so much about the fun is a hook to kind of remind people about reading and give it a broader focus, I guess, than just the everyday work that you normally do in book promotion. I think that's
absolutely. So do you think though that there is a serious side to this? Do you think that in engaging in World Book Day, when it first started, it would be about the fact that reading was important and therefore we have to find a way to engage? So there is a serious message behind World Book Day, I'm sure. Emma, do you want to come in?
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I think it's a lot more serious than it is silly, and I don't know if that's just because we're quite an academic school or because we're a secondary school. But yeah, I don't think there's much silliness at all. I think there's fun. I think there's a lot of fun activities, and like we said, there's stuff that brings people into the library. And like Cath said, they can't help but notice. I think that's a really good way of putting it. Like, you don't want to ram it down their faces, but it's such a big, exciting thing going on that they can't help but notice it. And something else that we do in our kind of main atrium, we call it the crush hall, I'm not really sure why, we create like a book reading corner. So last year it was a couple of armchairs and a fireplace that one of our theatre people just comes up with, those wonderful people that do that. And we create a rota, and so we have staff members that are sat reading, and that is between every single break time and lunchtime, every single lesson change, there is always a staff member reading. And again, I think it's like, this is actually a serious message, because these teachers are very, very busy. They have a lot to do. They've got to do your marking. You see them teaching lessons, and yet they've got 10 minutes to sit down and read this book, and that's how important it is to them. So yeah, I think when you said silly versus serious, I was thinking, it's not silly at all.
Well, I must admit, I think that was my hook, really, to get you all talking. But I like the idea of this book. So did they read for 10 minutes and then the next person takes over from where they finished? Is that how it works?
No, they read whatever book they are personally reading. Yeah.
Okay.
Which is nice, because then...
Do they read it out loud, presumably?
No, they sit. They sit quietly. They read to themselves.
Okay.
Yeah, because it's, very, very busy space. But it's like the visual that they think reading is important. And I'm going to sit here for 10 minutes and read my book. Thank you very much.
Fantastic. Well, that sounds really good. Really good. Ruth, can I bring you back in?
I'm afraid we do silly, pretty much. I mean, I don't know that silly. It is fun, the whole week. And if I'm not, because I shy away from that, librarians are very boring and the library is very boring. And if I make it too kind of the most serious thing we've got actually this week is that we had an activity that we were going to run on Friday, which can't run because it uses 2-year groups that can't be used on Friday. So I said, okay, well then Friday form time is going to be silent. Well, not silent, but it's going to be reading time. That's as serious as it gets, 20 minutes when the whole of the school, bar year 12 and 13, will be asked to read a book. And
did your classes and tutor groups and things, teachers all just agree that was fine because it is book week?
They kind of do as they're told. I'm asked to come up with a proposal for the week. I use our sixth form have to do volunteering, and I have quite a few people who choose to do their volunteering with me in the library, which is great. And I tell them that whatever they do for me throughout the year, they have to help me with World Book Week, so it's those students who are running my assemblies for me this week. It's the first year I've ever done it with them, but they are running my assemblies. One of them has created the slides. We've all worked together on the questions and they're presenting them. So those students, we all sat down at a a few weeks ago, or a little bit longer maybe, and we wrote a proposal for this week. I then have to send that to our senior leadership team, who say, yes, that's fine, or no, that's not. It was not fine to penalise teachers for not dressing up in fancy dress by putting them in the stocks in the summer. Who knew that wasn't going to go down well? And then it gets sent out, and it's pretty much fait accompli. You know, senior leadership have said it's okay, that's what we're doing. And actually, I think the teachers who are otherwise tasked with finding activities for form time are very glad if I say, I'm taking over form time for the week.
Yeah.
You know, I will provide the activity, I will provide the materials if you need them. You know, then there's an assembly, and then you've got one afternoon where I just want everyone to read quietly. But generally, I take on all the silliness of it, because, as you say, it's highlighting something, and it's something fun to do with books. You know, my readers are all over it anyway, and my non-readers are non-readers. And, you know, while I can encourage them in, and they might be encouraged by the conversations that go on around World Book Week, there's nothing I can do in a week which is going to change those children magically overnight into readers.
Funnily enough, though, I was just going to ask that question, is the fact that if there's been a buzz around school about reading for a whole week, do you find that you snag one or two more readers that you possibly didn't have? Maybe talk to somebody, a student that you hadn't talked to before? Do you think that there's enough of a hype that maybe somebody that hasn't really thought that the school library was for them is possibly worth another look, do you think?
I think for us, it is that kind of, oh, maybe I'll go and see what the library's got, because, you know, we tend to do a bit of talking about, they suddenly discover that actually I know what teenagers are reading. Right. And so those books are highlighted, which probably means they're in the library. And then they think, oh, well, maybe I'll go and have a look. And I think certainly for us, that works. What
about you, Cath? Do you think that is a something that happens? Is the seriousness, the serious message, I suppose, of World Book Day and World Book Week is ongoing beyond the week itself, do you reckon?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, again, I don't think one day is going to be enough to convince, you know, your hardened, reluctant readers that they're going to suddenly transform overnight into being massive bookworms. But I do think sort of the little messaging, and if you get staff involved as well, to try and help promote the message that, you know, reading is for everybody. I do think that the wider that message is spread, the easier it becomes to try and then, you know, hook people in. I guess that's one of the reasons why I'm doing the bookmarks this year, is to try and encourage them to see that there's more out there than just maybe, you know, the Diary of a Wimpy Kids, and there's a whole host of reading material. So just because you haven't found the book that you think, you know, the book that's actually hooked you in yet, doesn't mean to say that it's not out there waiting. And by maybe giving them a few different options of different categories of book to read, that might just kind of tick a box for them somewhere.
Does your bookmark include non-fiction, or is it just fiction?
No, non-fiction as well. So, and then there's a free choice as well. So there's four different suggestions, things like read a book by an author from a different country to the one you were born in, and then a free choice as well, so that they're there. And of course, the nice thing about it is that it doesn't matter if, you know, you're a keen reader or a reluctant reader. You know, you can find something that would tick those boxes without it being, you know, War and Peace. So
yeah, no, exactly. So a lot of schools invite visiting authors into school for Book Week. It's mad if you've not remembered to do that, because being able to book an author is impossible if you're trying to do it now. So if anybody's listening and they're wanting an author, it's not the year to be doing it. Do it next year. But have any of you got a visiting author with you this year? And how do you go about choosing them? It would be interesting to hear. So Emma, have you got a visiting author this week, or have you ever had one?
We tend to have visiting authors at different times of the year, and not so much in World Book Week, partially because we do find it very difficult to book. And also, I think there's a little bit of us that thinks we have the budget to get authors and a variety of authors throughout the year, whereas a lot of state schools might only have the budget for one author. And so it's great if they can get them in World Book Week, then that's fantastic. I think when we're looking at authors, we're thinking about targeting every age group. So we would have an author specific for year 7, and then we might have one that would be year 8 and year 9, and another one that would be the sixth form students. We did actually have Nell Frizzle booked for World Book Day, who is an adult author and journalist and writes non-fiction as well. But then her new book is coming out on Thursday, so she cancelled on us.
Oh no!
I know. It's like, oh, bad timing.
Good excuse,
but yeah,
good excuse though.
yeah. But that's the kind of the sixth form range and the do you want to be a journalist type bracket. So I think for us, it's thinking about what has that year group or those couple of year groups been exposed to in the last few years. What have we not done for a while, and what would be really good for them?
Absolutely. What about you, Ruth?
We don't have a visiting author. Last year we were very, very lucky, and we had Dan Abnett, who is a graphic novelist, works for Marvel. He was fantastic, but we got him as a favor pretty much. He's a friend of a member of staff. I really struggle, and it's interesting to hear Emma talk, because I'm expected to find an author that reaches from year 7 to year 13 in a super selective school with, a really broad selection of readers or non-readers. And could you find an author who can talk to all these year groups? I have yet to find an author who can talk to all those year groups. And so, if I'm honest, I've shied away from having a visiting author since COVID was a very convenient excuse. And I haven't gone back to it readily because it's such a big chunk of money. To get somebody in is hundreds and hundreds of pounds. I can afford one author visit a year. How do I, really what I should do is choose an author for year 7, and every year 7 should have an author visit, because then in the years they've been in school, they've all seen an author.
Absolutely.
But yeah, I'm afraid we certainly wouldn't have anybody for World Book Week, because it's like,
you see, as well as I think if you're going to have somebody for the day and you have several classes in your years, then what an author can achieve in a day is impossible. Can't possibly do the whole school.
No.
Unless they're going to do some kind of assembly kind of session where it's the same thing for everybody. But what the year 7s are going to enjoy and what the year 13s are going to enjoy is going to be so completely different. So it's a big ask for any author, apart from anything else. But you might be right. Select a year group, and just that year group gets it every year, so that that in their time at school they've at least seen one. Might be
Can I just jump in and say, I think it's also quite a big ask for the library staff, like especially if you're a solo librarian and you are escorting an author around and making sure that they have access to all the different year groups. You've got to make a sacrifice then as to how much time can you spend in the library and running the activities that you really want to do on the day. So it is quite a tricky decision to make sometimes.
It is. It's a real balance, isn't it? Cath, can I bring you back in?
Like Ruth, I haven't had an author visit since before COVID. Just there hasn't been a chance to actually to get one set up. We wouldn't ever have had one through World Book Week. I think it's busy enough as it is without adding in the extra stress of an author visit in with it as well. But I would have had an author visit just for year 8, which is year 7 in England. And I think that's that was the best way to do it. Sort of got them enthusiastic while they were still sort of young enough and eager enough to enjoy an author visit. And that way everybody in the school eventually did have an author visit. And it is something that I'd like to go back to. Again, it's just comes down to time and money, and they are expensive. But in terms of trying to choose one, there are several companies that deal with author visits. So I would have gone through them. Listen to recommendations from other librarians on SLN. There's always somebody sort of saying, have you had such and such, or we had a visit from this author, they were really good, excuse me. And Yeah, I think that's the way I do it, and then look at their websites, find out sort of what kind of thing they offer. Do they do writing workshops? Do they want to work with smaller groups? Are they happy to do big whole year group visits? Yeah,
it is definitely about finding out as much as you can about the author, so that they're not surprised and you're not surprised when they arrive.
Yeah, exactly. But I do think, an author visit, they are expensive, and I hope that they have a lasting impact. Certainly, I remember the first author visit I did with Alex Scarrow. The boys who had him in year 8 were still talking about his visit when they left in year 14, which was quite gratifying.
Absolutely, and that's what it's about, isn't it?
What it's about, isn't it? But yeah, it's sometimes hard to know the impact, but I know sort of from talking to boys afterwards, that they are always more enthused about reading as an activity once they've seen a real life author in the flesh.
Yeah, I gotta say, it does make a difference. I think we did a podcast sometime last year about authors and author visits, I think. So if anybody is listening and they want to listen back to that, then please go and have a look at it, or listen to it, because we did cover some of this. Sabrina, do you have ever had an author visit?
No.
Okay.
My predecessor, a couple of years before I arrived, got a storyteller in.
Okay.
And apparently, I can't remember her name. I've got it on my email somewhere, because I was hoping to bring her back in, and then I never had the money to do it. But she had like a year group at a time, and she did a whole story, and she did voices and costume changes and everything. And I was told it was amazing, and the kids really, really enjoyed it, and they were really surprised because they were quite a tough year group and they were all hooked on it. But I've turned up, the budget's been slashed, and the library needed so much work. It's like, well, author visit or improving our book collection, where do I prioritize? And it's like, I'm sorry, the physical library has kind of taken a priority. Absolutely. I would love to at some point, but I don't know.
Absolutely. Funnily enough, that reminds me of so we had an author, Anne Bryant, came. She ended up being the patron of reading for Guernsey. So normally the patron of reading is usually an author that lives local to a school. So they usually have one visit that they're paid for, and then over the year they will work with your school. You work out what they're happy to do for free, basically. But you find that they sort of have a bigger connection with your students because they're the author that they know. But Anne used to do this amazing thing called Play in a Day. This was primary level, but she would have 2-year groups, 5 and 6, and literally from nothing, at the end of the day, they produced a play. And honestly, I've never seen anything like it. She writes books, but she's also a musician, and she plays the piano, and she just had a way of engaging the students in a way that I've never seen before, and I don't suppose I'll ever see again. And most teachers, when they watched it at the end of the day, it was because she had no expectations of any of the students. There was no baggage. If this child wanted to step up and do that one line, that was fine. And very often it was the naughty kid that would normally not do anything, and the teacher would sit there going, how's he having a lead role? And teachers saying things like, wouldn't it be great if our Christmas play could just be done in one day? And they take weeks and weeks and weeks to do it. So it's authors bring talent that you can't replicate, and there are great people like Anne Bryant, but there are also equally just so many authors that they write fantastic books, but maybe they're not so good at presenting, and their skill and their craft is through the writing. So I think it's a really difficult thing to do, is to find the right person for you, but work out the price and the amount of effort and everything else that you put into it. So maybe, Sabrina, patron of reading is what you need to look for. I think there might be a local author that will work with you. Okay, so before I ask my last question, I just want to take this opportunity to promote my membership to my schools, to any school looking for ways to boost independent learning, literacy and wellbeing through your school library. If you're not sure how to make this happen, my membership programme offers training and support for school librarians and teachers and creates the opportunity to engage across the curriculum. You can find out more information in the link in the show notes below. So on to our final question for tonight. It is going to take you back to dressing up. How can we positively guide the dressing up? And I'm thinking particularly for busy parents. I'm a mother of 4, and I can remember World Book Day coming round, and I have to put my hand up when my boys wanted to wear their football kit. I was fine with that. It was easy and it was cheap, and they were fine. It was just trying to find the book that linked to it that was a problem. Sometimes some years it was easier than others. So can I start with Sabrina, who loves dressing up? How can you positively guide the dressing up and thinking about busy parents? What would you say?
Again, I think it comes down to the staff modelling. I actually had a text earlier from an old colleague who's just moved to another school, and their whole school's doing dressing up. The secondary school and the whole lot's doing it. And she said, I need a quick, easy costume. What do you suggest? So I said, well, Barbara Gordon, jeans, t-shirt, a satchel full of books and note papers. You know, she's a librarian, she's Batgirl in her alter ego, and she'll become the Oracle. And she was like, thank you so much. And it's like, all that is in your wardrobe. And I think it's getting away from these expensive shop bought costumes and saying, look, you can be Matilda, you can whack on a school uniform, you can do Horrid Henry, it's shorts and a t-shirt. It doesn't have to be the film accurate version or exactly in the illustration. It's about going, you know, this is the character. How do you see that character? And if we model that as staff and don't come in with these elaborately brought costumes, then the kids can see, actually, I can represent my character in my own clothing, or what I've managed to pull out the drawer, or the blanket I've wrapped around me as a toga, or whatever. I think it's just going in the cupboard and going, guys, just go and have fun with it.
Absolutely. So it's going back to basics, isn't it? Really, it is absolutely that. What about you, Emma? Any suggestions for those poor parents?
Crikey, I mean, we don't dress up, and we haven't dressed up for years, to be honest. We are dressing up a little bit on Friday evening. We've got a library leader murder mystery night, and last year we did a Harry Potter book night, but it's a similar vibe, especially with the Harry Potter stuff. It's like, you don't need a fancy wand that you bought from the studio, you know, just put a cape on and wear your school uniform. I definitely think Sabrina's right. It's about finding what you've already got and mushing it into a character.
Absolutely. And Cath, what about you?
Again, not a dressing up aficionado here, so a third vote for keeping it simple as you possibly can, I think.
Absolutely. And what about you, Ruth?
I was thinking, actually, what's interesting is that we're all secondary school librarians, and I suspect it's easier with the secondary school because, you know, if your kids are dressing up kind of kids, they'll probably go away and they might make something, or they might repurpose something. They might be a bit more imaginative about it. I suspect the people who find it most difficult are the parents of primary school children, who, you know, not all of them will have that kind of imagination. Not all of them will think about it in that way. And I wonder whether there's something I've never been a primary school librarian, they wouldn't have me. I wonder whether there's something in extending World Book Week the other way and trying to get the teachers and their kids thinking about what their costume is going to be, what their book is going to be, and how they could represent that character without going and buying a fancy costume, because that in itself is a conversation about the book and the character, and why do you like them, and how do you think you could represent. Because I do a thing about, I don't want you to go and buy a costume, recycle something, repurpose something, make something, but, you know, I'm not interested if your costume came from Amazon. And I think you could apply that same principle to a primary school. It would just need more preparation. And I know that that's a big ask. I know that the primary school teachers have got plenty on, but it just might be a different approach to it to ease that parental burden and to extend the reach of World Book Day out into the school a bit.
Sounds fantastic. Lovely idea. Thank you, Ruth. So thank you for joining me today, Emma, Cath, Ruth and Sabrina. It's been really interesting to chat with you. I hope that we've managed to persuade some people that World Book Day is a real opportunity to talk about reading that will last more than just one day. Don't forget to subscribe to our podcast so you don't miss out on future discussions. Thank you for listening and good night.